All right, what's up, everyone? It's Goose, and Neural just released their Quad Cortex Control. That is a hard phrase to say, Quad Cortex Control. So I was out for a bit on a work trip, and coming back, I had learned that Neural had released the Cortex Control, and I was just gonna check it out. And so today I'm going to make a preset specifically through the Cortex Control. On my previous video on the unboxing of the Quad Cortex, I had made a preset with the touchscreen. And today I'm going to try to create a preset with a different idea in mind, with different amps, and kind of give you my thoughts on my first impressions of the experience using the Cortex Control desktop app. So yeah, let's jump into it. It's going to be pretty straightforward today. I'm going to be using my FGN with Seymour Duncan Pegasus and Sentient. Largely just the Pegasus because I'm always on the bridge pickup. And yeah, I don't think there's that much more to go through. So let's get to it. This is Cortex Control, and it's empty right now, and let's add some blocks to it. So first thing I always end up adding is an amp block. I want to find an amp this time with a depth knob because I was kind of sorely missing that. Scrolling through these, it seems like the only ones with it are the Diesels and the 5150s. So let's add a Diesel Herbert. And with that noise, let's add a gate. All right, the simple gate seemed to be working. And then in the front of the amp, let's add an overdrive. Let's use a governor style pedal this time. This is basically like a plexi in a box. So from this point on, we're gonna add a second amp. So I wanna add a new lane. So I think you click this and you drag it. Yep, that sounds correct. I can just use one cab for each amp. So for this one, I'm going to just choose the Brit 60, this one right here. And then for the second amp, something clean, Bogner Shiva clean. That's a really good clean amp. So we're gonna keep that there. Here, I'm just gonna use a compressor. I'm not gonna use any overdrive like I did last time. So we're just gonna use a compressor. I don't know what M or ST means. Oh, I guess modded or standard maybe. I'm just gonna go with the ST because I don't know. That's more letters than M. So we have a cab there. I'm going to put a cab here too for the clean. We're going to go with a 2x12. I think 2x12s just generally sound better. There's a Sir V-type here. So we got our basic amp setup. We have the overdrive into the Herbert, and then we have the compressor into a Bogner Shiva, 2 cabs, and then we have this gate here. Hopefully this gate will work for both. If not, we'll have to adjust it a little bit more later on. And then from here, can we make another break or no? Oh, you can't. Okay. So you have to start your break at the second patch here. Okay. And then let's send this to here. Row 3. There we go. Row 3. And I'm going to add this rotary right here. And a rotary pedal is pretty fun to use, and I use one all the time. I'm going to split again. And for both of these lanes here, I'm going to actually be putting in a delay and a reverb. So one of them is going to have just a regular analog delay. And the other one is going to have, let's go with the slapback delay on this one. And then after that, we're going to put the reverb. I think having 2 different types of reverbs is going to work really, really well. So let's do a shimmer reverb and a room reverb. And that way we can get a good kind of like big ambient sound out of it. I'm kind of wondering where the CPU limit is right now. Can we add more amps after this? We can't. So we're limited to, okay, so there's a few amps that we can add here. So we're a little short on DSP at this point. But that's okay. I think we've got most of what I want. I think this works out. Let's start dialing things in. So the first thing I want to do, though, is for the second lane, I'm going to have to mute this. How do I do this? Change bypass to mute. Perfect. So that's simple compared to on the Quad Cortex. We're going to turn all these effects off and just work on our core sound. This is the sound of the Diesel Herbert right now. Let's actually see if we can dial it in a bit more. I think it has a little too much gain. I want a little bit more presence, a little bit more depth, and a little less bass. All right, I'm actually gonna change to the Diesel Herbert channel 2 because I'm not too big of a fan about how that channel 3 sounded. So yeah, channel 2. A little lower gain, a little bit more my taste right here. Let's add some gain to it. Sounds great. All right, so bass, putting that down, adding some depth. Need some shimmer up top. All right, I'm going to lower the bass a little bit more, and then we're going to add some treble. I actually kind of like where the mids are sitting. All right, let's adjust a little bit on the cab IR. So, all right, so the positioning is a little hard to work with, in my opinion, on usually these cab IRs. I think edge of cone usually works pretty well for me. All right, let's work on this overdrive. This overdrive's been on this entire time. Brighten it up a little bit and push the mids a little bit as well. Yeah. The gate seems to be working perfectly. This will actually be our first scene. There it is, gig view. That's what I wanted. Okay, so this scene is here. I'm actually going to save this to F, button F. So this will be good, and we're going to name this. So this will be named just like rhythm. We're going to make this purple. So for the lead tone, it's basically going to be a copy of the rhythm. So if I go here, it should be the exact same. Let's add some EQ. Last time I used just high-low cuts. I'm going to use a parametric this time. I only really need 3 bands. I'm going to use the 3. Low shelf, high shelf. Oh, that's what that means. What does an 8-band do? Oh, I see. There's an image. Whoa, okay. I just crashed the Cortex Control. All right, we got it up and running again. Let's add that EQ and see if we can not crash it. Really what I want to do though is I want to boost around 600 hertz and then put a cut around 2000 hertz. Basically get a good warm rounded sound. And then same with here. I'm going to put another high pass down here. And we're just going to do that. And then this second peak is going to also be around 200 hertz. And I usually like doing this because it kind of gives me like a rounded sound. Yeah, leads are a lot easier to play with this kind of a parametric running in front. And then here we're going to add one of the delays. So here's a slapback delay. And I think slapback actually sounds pretty good for leads. But we're also going to add this reverb and this reverb. So we have 2 reverbs. Just using the shimmer reverb here, the effects that happen after. I want a really long decay, so we're going to max that out actually. 20 seconds seems actually kind of crazy, but... So you hear that decay just keep going and going and going. That was a little boxy, so I think with this, we'll use this room delay to kind of clean that up a little bit. So with this, I'm going to do a... very aggressive high pass so that we don't have quite as much mid-range, but this room will still have like a high end to it. And then this pre-delay, again, I don't really need much of that. The decay for the room reverb can be much shorter, but I think 2 seconds is good, so we'll just max that out. So you hear that kind of like sweet sort of trail happening after notes now. And yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. This will be actually the lead tone. I'm going to save this on button E. So now we got 2 patches. I'm going to do G and H now. So for this clean patch, I'm going to turn off this gate right here. And then for the clean, we're going to do a little bit of adjustment, but it's not too much. Clean amps, I usually don't need to adjust too much. Maybe a little bit brighter. And then the compressor, I'm going to put at a high ratio. So I have it set here to like 15. And that's so that when I'm tapping, it's going to be as loud as my plucking. There's a little bit of noise too. I'll add a second. I think I'm going to add a second gate. We're going to go to the other scenes to make sure this gate's turned off. And then with just 1 reverb, I think this is fine. All right, so G patch is done. We can save that. We actually ended up not using the second delay today, but that's okay. I'll keep it there. But I want to use a rotary, so. And we're going to make this a fast rotary. And then because of how bright it is, I'm actually going to add a EQ, and it's just going to be a high cut. Let's lower the slow speed. Let's play around with the speed a little bit. So we're going to save that, and basically we got our patches. All right, so my thoughts on the Cortex Control, it's basically HX Stomp Edit. It's pretty close to HX Edit, like in terms of just how this is laid out. Like you have this scene where you see all the blocks in your chain. If you were to show, like if you were to click on an amp, you would get all the parameters underneath that. And on the left of that, you get the list of amps if you want to change anything. Same thing if you have overdrives. It's basically the same as the HX Stomp. And then like if you want to change impulse responses and stuff, that's all on the left side as well. It is very similar. It is kind of a copy and paste, but I will say that for a lot of folks who are used to using amplifiers, having dials instead of the lines, the bars that the HX Stomp uses, these are probably way more useful. If you're used to saying like 2 o'clock on the treble dial, you know exactly where that is here. You might not know exactly where that is on like a bar. A few things I do want to say that I kind of got a little confused about. So gig view shows you what the individual switches on the quad cortex does. And I usually run about 6 scenes. And then I have 1 or 2 like pedals, stomp pedals on the other remaining blocks. But on the quad cortex, you can't really do that. So right now I have this in hybrid view between stomp and scenes. So I can't drag a scene from the bottom to the top because the top can only be stomp boxes and then the bottom has to only be scenes. So I can't drag like a stomp box down either. So that's like kind of a big limitation here. If I wanted 2 scenes above here and the 2 stomps, I can't have that. I have to have either 4 stomp boxes on the top and then 4 scenes on the bottom or vice versa. I can't mix and match them in hybrid mode. And I can get around this by just using only scenes, but then I lose the functionality of having like a stomp box available if I want to just flip off an overdrive or something like that. Especially coming from the HX Stomp and the FM9 where you can just assign whatever foot switch to whatever you want. This one has a little bit more limitation there. The other thing that I find kind of peculiar is that for the lanes that you have up here, there's obviously 4 lanes because I think you can run a total of 4 instruments through here, which is kind of crazy. But if I wanted to do more than 1 loop just for this top area, and like let's say I wanted to take the loop I have down here and just move it up here and clean up this a little bit to be just 1 row, I can't do that because I can only have 1 loop per row. That being said, it's not really that big of a deal if I'm using it for personal use. If you wanted to run 2 guitars, they could only have 1 loop, which for most people, that's doable and not too big of a deal. But overall, like, Cortex Control is pretty complete. Aside from that one crash that I had, like, this has been pretty comprehensive and not at all difficult to use. And I think that's great because the idea behind the Quad Cortex is usability, and I'm glad that, you know, this is also fairly usable. It's not the prettiest thing. If you're used to like Neuro DSP plugins, this does not look anything near as pretty as a plugin, but it definitely gets the job done. And it actually, I think I prefer this over the plugin sometimes because I feel like some of the parameters on the plugin are kind of hard to read on the amp models. So I kind of just prefer this. And yeah, soon we'll have the plugins available on the Quad Cortex, and we'll see how that works in this whole thing as well. In future videos, if you want me to compare the Quad Cortex with, let's say, my FM9, the Tone X pedal, or the HX Stomp, or even the Boss CT1000, let me know. I've kind of become obsessed with like the different amp models that each of the units does well, and also the amp models that they don't do well. No single unit can do all amp models better than another unit, so something to consider if you're buying one of these units is which one has the best dual rectifier, or which one has the best Diesel Herbert. Like, these are things that might not be the first thing you think about with the modeler, but might be something to consider if you really value kind of the tone of those specific amp models. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below what you would like to see compared. Anyway, that's gonna do it for me. Hope you all enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please consider hitting like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Later!